Yes, sir. We're officially back at it. This is Boog Nice coming at you with the Marvel Legends Retro Collection Spider-Man figure review. Let's do it.
This ain't for no scalper. You a scalper? Then fuck out shit. This one's for them real collectors. That's army building and posing figures. Marvel Legends, imports, mini matey, I'm fucking with them. Hype beast, we know about you. Stay buying figs, don't know about it.
6 figures in a wave. You're going to need all 6 figures if you bout this life. Build a figure, sold separately. And there's a look at the front of the package. If you weren't already aware, this wave is based on the theme of the old Spider-Man animated series cartoon. So that's what you see here. All right, let's bust this bad boy open and see what's what. All right, here we go. Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. His bio on the back of the package reads, bitten by a radioactive spider, Peter Parker now possesses all the arachnid's attributes. He's the amazing Spider-Man. Hasbro Marvel Legends is the best toy line producing action figures in 1/12 scale. For the past 5 or 6 years running, they have been consistently better each and every year. They hold a close relationship with the press, who is able to relay what the fans want directly to Hasbro. They listen to the fans. They revived and reinvigorated the Marvel Legends line after Toy Biz went under. They've persevered. They never lost me as a fan. And despite all that, I'ma always tell it like it is when it comes to their product. I'm not here to sugarcoat, but right off the bat, I have to tell you that this is absolutely their best Spider-Man that they've ever put out. Probably one of the best figures that they've ever put out, period. And I do think that it's rivaling any other Spider-Man from any other line out on the market right now. I like this figure a lot. I'm pretty sure that most people are going to grow to love this figure. I think this is a buck that Hasbro is going to get a lot of usage out of. When I opened the figure and started messing around with him, I immediately thought about the Medicom Mafex Spider-Man. In March of 2019, that Spider-Man was released, and it was almost immediately crowned as the best 1/12 scale Spider-Man ever released. Marvel Legends is absolutely showing their muscle here with their release, a much cheaper version that absolutely stands up to the imports out there. To know where you're going, you got to know where you came from. So let me show you something. Before Hasbro took over Marvel Legends and Toy Biz was still going strong, they had a few sister lines that were running alongside Marvel Legends. They had Fantastic Four Classics, Hulk Classics, and Spider-Man Classics. These 3 figures originated from the Spider-Man Classics line, and previously they were the best 1/12 scale Spider-Man figures in the world. So on the left is the Fearsome Foes Spider-Man, in the middle is what collectors dubbed the McFarlane Spider-Man, which is actually not really correct, and on the right is the Snapshot Spider-Man. All kind of awkward, all kind of hard to stand, but all super posable, and they all looked really good in dynamic poses. Technically, Toy Biz Marvel Legends never released a new Spider-Man figure. We did not get our first official Marvel Legends Spider-Man until Pizza Spidey. All of the Marvel Legends Spider-Man that came out during Toy Biz's run were actually just repurposed, reused figures from the Spider-Man Classics line. Fearsome Foe Spider-Man is basically just a retooling of the McFarlane Spider-Man. The Snapshot Spider-Man on the far right was repurposed or redecoed for the Sinister Six box set Spider-Man. So let me correct that and let me be clear. Pizza Spider-Man was the first classic Spider-Man released by Marvel Legends. They have released a bunch of different versions of Spider-Man, but the first actual regular blue and red suit Spider-Man was Pizza Spider-Man from Marvel Legends. The Spider-Man that came in the Urban Marvel Legends box set was also originally from the Spider-Man Classics line. The so-called McFarlane Spider-Man was bootleg to all hell. This is actually a bootleg version, which actually, in terms of the durability and the joints being tighter, this is actually kind of better than the original figure. He was also redecoed with a darker sort of tone on the costume and released in a different packaging under Hasbro. But again, these 3 figures had great articulation, probably too much articulation in certain instances, but you could definitely pose them up. This guy I really liked, but he seemed like a little too buff and awkwardly proportioned for Spider-Man. But again, one of my favorites of all times, one that was very high on the secondary market for a while. I remember some years back that some collector had a bunch of these on ice, and he just started selling them on eBay for a decent price, and a lot of people were able to grab up this figure. but it is one that was very high on the secondary for a while. I think the so-called McFarlane Spidey here probably went for the most money on the secondary market. It was up there with some exuberant amounts at one point. But again, a really good figure at the time for its time. Its time has certainly passed, but that was the beauty of the SpiderMan Classics line. Another thing that they did well was release a lot of cool villains that you could add on to your Marvel Legends collection. Marvel Legends wasn't really doing any Spider-Man themed waves at the time. Now Marvel Legends is doing a couple or maybe even 3 Spider-Man themed waves each year. One of the downsides to the Spider-Man Classics line though was that a lot of the figures had gimmicks. You know, they were still marketing to kids at the time. And nowadays, it seems like they're marketing directly to the collectors and the display artists. The Fearsome Foes box set Spider-Man probably ended up being my favorite out of the 3. I've seen some people pop this head off and put the McFarlane Spidey head on there and do some different things. But, you know, back in these days, you couldn't really pop these heads off easily. It wasn't a lot of swapping of hands and heads and stuff like that. So whatever you got, that's what you got. You know, this came with a little webbing on the back. You could take this off though, but it was definitely a painstaking process to get it back on. Even in my longer intro song that I use for some of my longer videos, I have a line that says, compose pieces with artists that span the globe, Fearsome Foes Spidey in a picture perfect pose. So last week I mentioned that I'll be updating my intro. I think I'm gonna re-record it, and Spider-Man from one of these lines is gonna make it into the lyrics of the intro for sure. But man, Fearsome Foes was a great Spider-Man. All right, let's get back on track. So out of the package, the Retro Wave Spider-Man came with 2 thwipping hands attached, and these look like the sculpt that we've been getting with all the other Spider-Men so far. Pizza Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man. They introduced new bucks for Spider-Man on Spider-Man 2099 and the UK Spider-Man. And Legends has been doing pretty well, but it was definitely understood that they needed to step their game up and release a new superposable Spider-Man. I actually had mentioned this to Dwight and to the gang at New York Toy Fair last year sometime, and they seemed very receptive to that because they probably already had this in the works. But I had mentioned Spider-Man and Mary Jane and a Peter Parker, and they just sat there and smiled and nodded. So things definitely worked out. He's also packed in with 2 fists, and there you can see him in a vanilla pose, and you can see how not awkward he looks. He looks great. I think it's a great sculpt. I think they did a very, very good job on this figure. And you know, display art, toy photography, A.C.B.A. is not all about dynamic posing and action shots. It is about natural posing and getting the figures into vanilla poses. So oftentimes I judge a figure right off the bat on whether or not it can just stand up right and look good in a vanilla pose. So here he is next to the McFarlane Spidey on the left and the Snapshot Spidey on the right, and in just the vanilla pose he's beating these 2 out, no question. And there's the Urban Legends box set Spider-Man on the left and the Fearsome Foes box set Spider-Man on the right. And one thing I'm happy is gone, but it was still fun while it lasted, was the articulated fingers on some of the Toy Biz figures. So obviously you could do things like this, but the interchangeable hands is a much better feature. So stepping into the more modern era of Hasbro with some of Hasbro's previously revered Spider-Man bucks, we have the Superior Spider-Man on the left and the Pizza Spider-Man on the right. And you can see how those stack up, and no question about it, the new Retro Spider-Man is definitely light years ahead of their 2 previous attempts. So let's take a closer look at his deco and talk articulation while we're at this point, because there are some things I need to note comparatively between the Retro Spider-Man and previous Hasbro releases. So this is the design of the head attached to him out of the package. Take a close look at the eyes and the web lines there. He's also packed in with another head sculpt that looks like this. And actually, real quick, take a look at this ball peg and this design. Very interesting. I'll get into that shortly. And the additional head sculpt, you can see the bolder, darker lines around the eyes, and you can see the web pattern is a little different. Not sure which artist's look they're going for with each head. You guys let me know in the comments below. But I do like both. I do think they both look really good. And just taking a look at the rest of the deco overall, and they didn't go for any sculpted lines or anything, but the lines are bold, they're sharp, they look good. You can see how the spider emblem looks on the back. And the symbol on the front as well. I do see just a little bit of paint bleed here on the forearm. You can see some of the blue bleed in here. But for the most part, this is pretty clean. Obviously, when this shows up at retail, you can look through and see, and pick one that is to your liking in terms of paint. These are not actually due out into September, and Kingpin is not due out into November, but you know how I do. But he looks great all the way down to the feet. As you saw, there's no issue standing him. I really do like the way this guy looks. It's a very attractive figure. Now, this wouldn't be a proper Boog Nice review if I didn't point out some of my gripes, some things that I think can be adjusted or improved on. For one, he came with only 2 sets of hands. So he's got the 2 fists and the 2 whipping hands. When in the past with Pizza Spidey and other Spider-Man figures, we've gotten the 3 sets of hands. He definitely needs those open hands for more expression, more posability, more playability. All right, let's talk articulation and let's talk how it compares to the Spider-Man figures of the past from Hasbro. So you saw the head was on that new sort of ball joint. Because there's a little cut on the back of the neck, it allows the head to get up pretty damn far. He can look up really far. That looks great. He can look down. He can get pivot. He can turn left to right, do a full 360. I have no issue with the head. I think the head and neck articulation is better than anything they've done in the past. So that's one check mark. Shoulders are on a ball joint. They'll come up pretty far. You can do a full 360. There is a butterfly joint there. The butterfly joint works much better than any of their figures in the past. Another check mark. Upper bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, a swivel and a hinge on the wrist. No issues there. Upper torso articulation is good. Rotates, moves back and forward, left, right. No issues there. Ab crunch, really deep forward, looks great. Really far back, looks great. My issue though is that there's no cut at the waist. Pizza Spider-Man had a cut at the waist, as did the Superior Spider-Man. I think they kind of dropped the ball there. I think I would have liked to see the cut at the waist so you can turn him there. Now I understand he has the upper torso articulation and that seems to be the new thing, but I mean, we going for super posable, best Spider-Man, trying to rival Mafex. You got to go the distance. T-joint at the pelvis. It looks good. It doesn't look awkward in this area. As a matter of fact, the upper torso to the abdominal area to the pelvic area doesn't look elongated. It doesn't look weird. It looks very good. They have a drop-down method here at the pelvic area, which is great. It's new, it's modern, it's something that they needed to do, something that they needed to implement into their figures for sure. And that's actually something that we saw first on the Marvel Legends Beast figure, if I'm not mistaken. So that's great. You get a very good range of motion. The leg will go all the way up. You get a great split. That was one of the issues with Pizza Spider-Man and some of the other Spider-Man figures, was that they didn't get a good split. It's Spider-Man. He's one of the most agile characters in the Marvel Universe. You got to give him the most and best articulation scheme. Upper thigh swivel, double jointed knee. You do get rotation at the calf or the shin, and that was something that was missing from some of the Spider-Man figures. No rotation at the calf or shin for Superior Spider-Man or Pizza Spider-Man. You get a hinge. You get a nice deep ankle pivot. So overall, no question, the articulation is better than anything else that they put out, but I really do wish there was a waist swivel. More comparisons. So newer bucks that Hasbro released for Spider-Man figures, the Spider-Man 2099 buck was great, and it still looks very, very good here alongside the new retro Spider-Man. A lot of people were saying, hey, listen, give us a new Spider-Man on the Spider-Man 2099 buck, but they did us one better and gave us a totally new buck that not only rivals that 2099 buck, but definitely surpasses it. Still, the Spider-Man 2099 does retain the waist swivel. And on the right, we have the Spider UK buck, which was new, and it was great for that particular character as far as the stature, the size, but not articulated enough for a Spider-Man character. Spider-Man 2099 has the butterfly joints. It's got decent head neck articulation, not better than the new retro Spider-Man. It does have the calf or shin swivel too down at the bottom, so it's very close. And here's a couple of other smaller Spider-Man bucks. You can see the Ultimate Green Goblin Build-A-Figure Wave. I think the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man there on the left. You can see how those butterfly joints at the shoulder look and that sort of weird protrusion there. And at the pelvis, you can see that gappage there. Decent articulation. They were kind of on the right track, I guess, but just not that well executed. And then on the right is the Hobgoblin Build-A-Figure Wave Miles Morales Spider-Man. Great stature, great size for a smaller kid buck, but the articulation was just really poor, especially down at the feet where the feet hinge. You can't get him into that classic crouching Spider-Man pose. So, with this new articulation that they introduced on the retro Spider-Man, it'd be nice for them to downsize that a little bit and retool some of the smaller Spider-Man. Alright, let's do some swaps and comparisons and see what works. So, Pizza Spider-Man half masked head here. It doesn't completely pop onto the peg and the colors don't exactly match up. Plus the way that the head sculpts on the new Retro Spider-Man are built, they kind of swoop down over the back of this joint here to kind of cover it a bit. And you don't get that with the Pizza Spidey head. But I guess in some perspective shots or with the right lighting, you can make this work. And there's the Pizza Spidey fully masked head, which looks good. It actually looks better than the half-masked head. It looks like the colors match up better. I don't know how that is or why that is, being that both heads were packed in with the same figure. And this actually pops onto the peg too, and it covers that neck peg in the back a little bit. You can retain all of the articulation. This is not bad. This looks pretty good. So this is another option for you if you have the Pizza Spider-Man. Still quite a few people out there that never got a Pizza Spider-Man. And there's the Pizza Spidey head with the Pizza Spidey open hands with the fingers spread. Now this doesn't quite work because the hands won't pop all the way into the joint due to the fact that the Pizza Spidey hands have those little ridges on the peg. So that's the Pizza Spidey hand on the left here, and then this is the hand that came with the Retro Spider-Man. Now I do know there is another Spider-Man without the ridges, so we should be able to finesse this. There we go. The modern Spider-Man that came in the Spider-Man and Mary Jane 2-pack has the hands that have the pegs without the ridges. They will pop all the way in, and they match up pretty well. They look fine. So Pizza Spidey head with those hands, and you got some more options. And there's the stock head that came on the Retro Spider-Man with the hands from the 2-pack Spider-Man. I think the Pizza Spidey head looks just a tad bit small, and I do think I prefer this option, but I do like the fact that you have options. And there's the additional head that came with the Retro Spider-Man. And just more options for play. These are the web lines that came with the PS4 Gamerverse Spider-Man back there. And there was never really any real way to attach it to the wrist, but this is something that they probably should have included with this Spider-Man, was some web lines. And maybe just update this design where you can just hook it around the wrist like some of the import Spider-Mans that we've seen in the past. But you could finagle, you could play with it, you could figure it out. There's kind of the McFarlane style head that came attached to the Spider-Man that was in the Raft box set. And that looks okay. It kind of matches up. I don't really like the shape on this body. I think it looks maybe just a tad bit too small. It does kind of pop on the neck and you can retain the articulation. It pops on there, but it's loose. It's one of those pops that's still loose. And there's the battle damage head that came in the Black Suit Spider-Man and Kraven 2-pack. And that pops onto the peg, covers up the neck joint in the back pretty well. And it looks good. I like the proportions here. I like this a lot. And there's the Spider-Punk head and vest on the Retro Spider-Man body. Maybe an indication of things to come as they start to redo some of the past Spider-Man figures with this new buck. I don't think they'll do everybody, but for certain I think we'll at least get a Black Suit Spider-Man on this buck. But yeah, the head pops on here and the vest does fit. It's a little tight as the buck for Spider-Punk is a little more slender, but it works. And Spider-Punk's hands match too. They match up pretty well. They don't have that little ridge on the peg, so you can pop them in and they sit flush. You can see the little guitar pick there. I'm not breaking out the guitar, but another option. All right, let's see how he stacks up with some of the women in his orbit. So on the left is the Molten Man Build-A-Figure Wave Julia Carpenter SpiderWoman, and on the right is the better of the two Black Cats we had. Look at when Marvel was actually giving us voluptuous bodies on the female figures. But this is the Ultimate Green Goblin Build-A-Figure Wave Black Cat, and she's got the heels on. She's tall. Spider-Man is only supposed to be about 5'10", so I think this works out okay. And there he is next to Marvel Legends Silk from the Space Venom Build-A-Figure Wave on the left. She's all ready for quarantine. She was ahead of the curve, obviously. And then on the right is the Thanos Build-A-Figure Wave Spider-Woman. Again, a very voluptuous buck here. I don't think we're going to see any more female bucks like this from Marvel Legends, so if you have this figure, hold on to it. And there's Silk unmasked, and that right eye looked like it's floating a little bit. And on the right is the Mary Jane figure, so I'll keep her around as I progress through the reviews for the figures from this wave. Obviously, I'll need her for the Gwen Stacy review. Alright, let's do some villains. So on the left is the Monster Venom Build-A-Figure. That's supposed to be Mac Gargan. Morgan as Venom. I'll break out regular Eddie Brock Venom, but they actually re-released this figure as Eddie Brock Venom in his sort of hulking form, but I don't have that one actually yet. I think he's on my pile of loot at Big Bad Toy Store right now. And then on the right is the Rhino Build-A-Figure, so I think that works well. I'm really liking the size and stature of this retro Spider-Man. I think Pizza Spider-Man was a little too tall now that I'm really looking at this guy. Again, Spider-Man's supposed to be about 5'10", and I love how the villains here are towering over Spider-Man. There's the Marvel Legends Kraven from the Kraven and Black Suit Spider-Man 2-pack on the left, and then there is a headless suited body. Gonna need that around once I review Green Goblin. And then on the far right is the Kingpin Build-A-Figure. Obviously the Kingpin due out at the end of the year will be the same buck, just a different deco. There is Venom and Carnage, who definitely need upgrades on newer, more articulated bucks. And I think that there is a very good probability that we will see that within this retro line. I mean, they are two characters that definitely showed up in the Spider-Man animated series. Alright, let's talk about what we came here to talk about. Is the new retro series Marvel Legends Spider-Man the new undisputed 1/12 best Spider-Man on the market? Does it give you the most bang for your buck? Is the articulation good enough to stand up next to the import figures? Is it fun? So what I have here is what I believe are the best versions of Spider-Man from some of the major lines. So on the left, we have the Amazing Yamaguchi Revoltech Spider-Man. And then going right, we have the PS4 SH Figuarts Gamerverse Spider-Man. And then we have the Mafex Spider-Man. And then I don't own any Mezco Spider-Mans. And I don't own them purposely because I would never buy a Mezco Spider-Man. Kind of defeats the purpose to me if you're not going to be able to fully articulate and dynamically articulate a Spider-Man figure, then I don't need some semi-articulated buck in a cloth suit. So I was told that the Mezco Spider-Man is on the same buck as Gomez, one of them. So this is a Gomez body with one of the extra heads from the retro Spider-Man on there, just for size comparison, I suppose. In my opinion, the Marvel Legends Retro Spider-Man is absolutely standing up to each and every one of these figures, and probably my new favorite 6-inch scale Spider-Man. The Amazing Yamaguchi Revoltech Spider-Man is cool. It's a very fun figure. It's nice to pose. It looks great in certain dynamic displays. It photographs pretty well, but it's kind of on its own. I mean, the Revoltech line is surely not as deep as Marvel Legends, and you know, when you get him in a vanilla stance, it's not the most attractive looking figure. It is what it is. He is a little blocky, but again, it's a fun figure. Now, the PS4 SH Figuarts Spider-Man is very nice, very well articulated. They were able to really capture the look from the game, but it's a very small figure, and it's not as engulfed into any one universe like the Marvel Legends figures are. It's a good standalone figure, but the height really bothers me on that figure. We'll skip over Mafex for right now because I think Mafex is the reigning champion. But talking about Mezco, like I said, I just wouldn't even buy a Mezco Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong. I know it's a lot of you out there that'll advocate for Mezco Spider-Man and say that they have a couple that are really good. So what? It's not going to stand up to anything for my personal liking as far as articulation and fun factor and being able to integrate it with other figures in a deep universe like Marvel Legends has done. So I don't know of any Figma Spider-Man figures that are like in a classic comic book style. I don't own any Spider-Man figures from Diamond Select. And honorable mention is the Spider-Man Homecoming Tech Suit Spider-Man from Mafex as well. That's another very good figure from Mafex. Nothing from Diamond would really stack up in my eyes because it's 7-inch scale. I don't collect that, and they really couldn't even put the amount of articulation on one of their figures needed to rival any one of these figures. So that leaves Retro Spidey to face off against the Mafex Spider-Man, and you can see how they look side by side just in a vanilla stance. The Mafex Spider-Man looks a little awkward in comparison to the Retro Spidey. I think it's a better body mold. Now, don't get me wrong, the Mafex Spider-Man has better articulation, way more accessories. It is obviously sold at a much higher price point. Super fun figure, great to pose. Mafex has been making the rounds and doing character characters from the main Marvel universe, so they are kind of universe building at the moment. However, almost every figure that they have released from the main Marvel universe has had some sort of issue with the body type looking awkward in some way, shape, or form, and the Mafex Spider-Man is no different. It is a little oddly proportioned. There are some things that do look a little weird. Not to mention there's a lot of QC issues associated with Mafex. I saw a lot of people when they first got this figure, their wrist pegs broke, the legs were coming unattached at the pelvic area. You never really have that trouble with Marvel Legends, and if something happens, if it breaks or if something gets scratched or scraped or, you know, it's not really to your liking, you could easily just purchase another Marvel Legends figure at $19.99 to $24.99 a pop. It's not a big deal. If you spend $80, $90, upwards of $100 on a figure, you're not going to be quick to replace that figure when something goes wrong. Like I mentioned, Mafex has Marvel Legends beat in terms of articulation. They do have that waist articulation. They do have better head and neck articulation. Butterfly joints are there. He rotates at the foot and not at the shin or the calf. But the one thing that Marvel Legends does have in terms of the look though over the articulation on the Mafex is this down here. You can fully see the web lines here at the pelvis where you can't see that on a Mafex version, and that's why the pelvis area looks a little awkward. It's sort of like tucked in, and that just doesn't look right. Of course, I like the colors of the Marvel Legends version more. You know, these colors on Mafex are a little muted, but the Marvel Legends version is going to be my new top 1/12 scale Spider-Man figure. And I think despite some of the things that Mafex has over the Marvel Legends version, Marvel Legends takes the crown on this one. And the thing about the Marvel Legends figure is that it's only going to get better very fast as they release more versions on this buck and give you more hands and heads and more options to swap. The Marvel Legends line is just too deep for any other line to compete right now. The Mafex Spider-Man is still a very, very good figure, but again, Marvel Legends just has my heart. Maybe I'm a little biased, but I do think this is the better figure. Alright, I'm getting up out of here. Retro Wave Spider-Man, must own, must buy, very good figure. Highly recommend it. You should not pass up on this at all. Get the entire wave. Now, I will be moving through the reviews for the other 5 figures from this wave. They will all be intertwined, interlocked. I will do comparisons and swaps and do whatever needs to be done. You have any questions, put them down there in the comments below. Thanks for hanging out. As always, rate, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell down there. And until next time, peace.
That's crispy.
No question, this one gets my A.C.B.A. stamp of approval.
Crispy.